Hello everyone. So welcome to session 24 of IS Baba's Rapid Revision series of 500 high probable topics for prelims 2020. I am Preetham Reddy and I will be dealing with 20 important topics in this session which is very crucial for prelims examination this year. So our first topic is Kalidasa. So in our previous session we completed three personalities whom like finance minister during budget speech had quoted. So even Kalidasa was quoted in the budget speech. So Kalidasa is the legendary Sanskrit scholar and he is believed to have lived during the middle of the 4th and early 5th century AD during the reigns of Chandragupta II, Vikramaditya and Kumaragupta. So Kalidasa's Raghuvamsa was quoted by finance minister during her budget 2020 presentation in the parliament. And this Raghuvamsa from which finance minister quoted is one of the two long epic poems which is written by Kalidasa. So finance minister, she mentioned the 18th verse saying Surya, the sun, it collects vapor from little drops of water. So does the king. So they give back copiously. They collect only for people's well-being. So finance minister said that just as Surya, that is sun, collects vapor from little drops of water, so must a government collect taxes lightly. So Kalidasa's plays and poetry are primarily based on the Vedas, Ramayana, Mahabharata and the Puranas. Kalidasa's surviving work consists of 3 plays, 2 epic poems and 2 shorter poems. So Kalidasa wrote 3 important plays. One is Malavika Agnimitram. Second is Abhignana Shakuntalam. Third is Vikramorvasiyam. And 2 important epic poems are Raghuvamsa and Kumara Sambhava. So Kalidasa's 2 minor poems are Ritu Samhara and Meghaduta. So the earliest paleographical evidence of Kalidasa is found in a Sanskrit inscription found at Mandsaur's Sun Temple. So his name along with that of poet Bharavi is mentioned in a stone inscription found at Aihole, which is located in present-day Karnataka. So next important topic or personality, Abhindranath Tagore. So it's 150th birth anniversary of Abhindranath Tagore. So he was the principal artist and creator of Indian Society of Oriental Art. So Abhindranath Tagore was also the first major exponent of Swadeshi values in Indian art. Thereby he founded the influential Bengal School of Art and which later on led to the development of modern Indian painting called Neo-Bengal School. Abhindranath Tagore was also a noted writer particularly for children and he was popularly known as Aban Thakur. So his books Raj Kahani, Budo Angla, Nalak and Kirer Putul were landmarks in Bengali language children's literature and art. He sought to modernize Mughal and Rajput styles, especially synthesis of Ajanta murals and Mughal painting to counter the influence of Western models of art as taught in art schools under the British Raj. And one important famous work of Abhindranath Tagore was his painting Bharat Mata, which was done during the Swadeshi movement which sparked off in 1905. So he was the first one to represent Indian map in the form of Bharat Mata. So the impact of this painting was that Bharat Mata became the new deity of the country. And Abhindranath Tagore was the nephew of Rabindranath Tagore. So remember it. Next important topic is famous personality Vikram Sarabhai. So it's 100th birth anniversary of Vikram Sarabhai. And Vikram Sarabhai, as you know, he was an Indian physicist and an astronomer who initiated space research and also helped develop nuclear power in India. So Dr. Sarabhai was considered as the father of Indian space program. He was instrumental in establishing the Physical Research Laboratory in Ahmedabad. And he was also a chairman of Atomic Energy Commission. Some of the most well-known institutions established by Dr. Sarabhai are Physical Research Laboratory Ahmedabad, Indian Institute of Management Ahmedabad, Community Science Center Ahmedabad, Darpan Academy for Performing Arts which is also in Ahmedabad, and Vikram Sarabhai Space Center which is in Thiruvananthapuram, Kerala, Space Application Center which is in Ahmedabad, Faster Breeder Test Reactor which is in Kalpakam, and Variable Energy Cyclotron Project which is in Calcutta, Electronics Corporation of India Limited, Hyderabad, Uranium Corporation of India Limited, Jaduguda. Okay, so maybe in prelims some of these statements can be given which of the following were established by Dr. Vikram Sarabhai. Okay. So the establishment of ISRO was also one of his greatest achievements, and he successfully convinced the government of the importance of a space program for a developing country like India after the Russian Sputnik launch. And Dr. Sarabhai was also instrumental in setting up the first rocket launching station in India. So this center was established in Tumba, which is near Thiruvananthapuram on the coast of Arabian Sea, primarily because of its proximity to the equator. Also, it is important to note, it is because of Sarabhai's dialogue with NASA in 1966, the satellite instructional television experiment, that is SITE, was launched during 75 to 76 when Dr. Sarabhai was no more. So Dr. Sarabhai started a project for the fabrication and launch of an Indian satellite, and as a result the first Indian satellite, Aryabhatta, was also put into orbit in 1975 from a Russian cosmodrome. And Dr. Sarabhai was very interested in science education, and he founded a community science center at Ahmedabad in 1966. Today the center is called Vikram Sarabhai Community Science Center. So next important topic is Pune Pact. So the Pune Pact of 1932 is a landmark event in India's struggle for independence, and it marked the start of social justice movement in the country under the leadership of Dr. Ambedkar. And since now with 70 years of Indian Constitution, without this Pune Pact, the Constitution would never have been. So let's see about Pune Pact. Pune Pact, it refers to an landmark agreement between B.R. Ambedkar and Mahatma Gandhi on behalf of depressed class and upper caste Hindu leaders on the reservation of electoral seats for the depressed classes in the legislature of British India government. So the background to the Pune Pact was the communal award of August 1932. So you might have read that during the second round table conference, British decided to grant a communal award for representing minorities in India by providing for separate electorates for minority communities. In this conference, INC took part, and Mahatma Gandhi was appointed as sole representative of the INC. And Gandhi and Ambedkar, they differed on the issue of separate electorate for the untouchables. And Gandhi was against treating untouchables as separate from the Hindu community. So this issue was resolved through the Pune Pact 1932. And Gandhi, who was opposed to the communal award, saw it as a British attempt to split Hindus, and Gandhi began a fast unto death to have it repealed. So in a settlement negotiated with Gandhi, Ambedkar agreed for depressed class candidates to be elected by a joint electorate. The major significance you have to know about this Pune Pact. So with this Pune Pact, the upper class Hindus, they accepted that the depressed classes constituted the most discriminated section of the Hindu society. It was also considered that something concrete had to be done to give them a political voice as well as a leg up to lift them from a backwardness. So the Pune Pact had several positive outcomes for Ambedkar. It sealed his leadership of the depressed classes across India, and he made the entire country, and not just the Congress party, morally responsible for the upliftment of the depressed classes. So most of all, he succeeded in making the depressed classes a formidable political force for the first time in the country. Also, one important point is this Pune Pact was signed by Ambedkar on behalf of the depressed classes, and Madan Mohan Malviya on behalf of the upper caste Hindus, as a means to end the fast that Gandhi was undertaking in the jail as a protest against the McDonald Communal Award. So next important topic is Anglo-Kuki War. So this 2019 marked 100 years of this Anglo-Kuki War. So before the British came in, Kukis had been dominant tribes of hill areas surrounding the Imphal during the rule of Maharajas of Manipur. So the Kukis, they exercised full control over their territory until then. So therefore, the Anglo-Kuki War was essentially a war for the independence and liberation of the Kukis from the imperialists. The war had unified the efforts of Kukis living in northeast India, Myanmar and Bangladesh. Even so, the state of Manipur had already lost its independence to the Britishers in 1891 and became free only after India became independent in 1947. So the Anglo-Kuki War began when the Britishers asked the Kukis to get enrolled in their labor corps in France, and the latter resisted. So the Kukis constitute one of the several hill tribes within India, Bangladesh and Myanmar, and in Northeast India, they are present in all states except Arunachal Pradesh. So in India, cookies are recognized as scheduled tribes. Remember it. Next important topic is AIM iCrest. So Atal Innovation Mission launched this particular AIM iCrest in partnership with Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and Wadhwani Foundation. So this AIM iCrest, that is Incubator Capabilities Enhancement Program for a robust ecosystem, it focuses on creating high performing startups. So you have to remember this AIM iCrest is to create high performing startups. So this AIM iCrest has been designed to enable the incubation ecosystem and act as a growth hack for incubators across the country. And under this initiative, the AIM incubators are said to be upscaled and provided requisite support to foster the incubation enterprise economy that will help them to significantly enhance their performance. So this will be complemented by providing training to entrepreneurs through technology driven processes and platforms. And also you should know what is this Atal Innovation Mission. So it is Government of India's flagship initiative to promote a culture of innovation and entrepreneurship in the country. And the major objective of this Atal Innovation Mission is to develop new programs and policies for fostering innovation in different sectors of the economy, and also to provide platform and collaboration opportunities for different stakeholders. So next important topic is Strive Project and Sankalp. So both these schemes are aimed at institutional reforms and to improve the quality and market relevance of skill development training programs, especially in long and short term vocational education and training. So first we'll see with the Strive project. So Strive, as the name says, Skill Strengthening for Industrial Value Enhancement Operation Project. So the major objective is to improve access to quality and market driven vocational training provided in ITIs and apprenticeships. So it is a center sector scheme, and World Bank has committed around $125 million, that is around 800 crores loan to India for this Strive project for skill development. So the result areas for the project include improved performance of ITIs, increased capacities of state governments to support ITIs, and also apprenticeship training, and improve the teaching and learning, and improve the apprenticeship training. So Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship is the one which is overseeing this particular Strive project. And next, Sankalp. Sankalp is skills acquisition and knowledge awareness for livelihood promotion. So this Sankalp is an outcome-oriented centrally sponsored program of Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship with a special focus on decentralized planning and quality improvement. So it focuses on the overall skilling ecosystem covering both central and state levels. So this World Bank will provide around 250 million loan to India for Sankalp. So Sankalp is a project to reform the skill development landscape, strengthen institutions at both center and state levels, enable greater decentralization of skill development governance, and also improve industry connect of skill development program. So the project is being implemented in mission mode through World Bank support and is aligned with the overall objectives of the National Skill Development Mission. So next important topic is Shreyas. See, all these topics, Strive, Sankalp, Shreyas, all these are associated with skill development, but we have to be careful because we might get confused, because this scheme is for higher education youth in apprenticeship and skills. But this is launched by Ministry of Education for providing industry apprenticeship opportunities to the general graduates through the National Apprenticeship Promotional Scheme. So it comprises of the initiatives of three central ministries, namely Ministry of Education, Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship, as well as Ministry of Labour and Employment. So the program is conceived for students in degree courses, primarily for non-technical students, with a view to introduce employable skills into their learning and also promote apprenticeship as integral to education, and also amalgamate employment facilitating efforts of the government into education system. So the major target of this Shreyas program is to cover 50 lakh students by 2022. So next we'll know about NAPS. NAPS is National Apprenticeship Promotional Scheme. So it provides for placing of apprentices up to 10% of the total workforce, and it is implemented by the Sector Skill Council. And under this SNAP scheme, central government shares 25% of the stipend per month subject to a maximum of rupees 1500 per month during the period of apprenticeship. And apart from that, an amount up to 7500 will be met towards basic training cost wherever needed. So next important topic is Samadhan. So Samadhan is a mega online challenge which has been launched to test the ability of students to innovate. So even Samadhan can be confusing because all the programs are starting with S. So be careful. Samadhan is a mega online challenge. So the innovation cell of the Ministry of Education and All India Council for Technical Education in collaboration with Forge and Innovatio Curious, so they launched this online challenge Samadhan to invite ideas and innovations that can help fight against the novel coronavirus. So the challenge is open for student innovators, researchers, educators and startups to participate. So under this Samadhan challenge, the students and faculty will be motivated for doing new experiments and new discoveries and provide them with a strong base leading to spirit of experimentation and discovery. So the students participating in this challenge will search and develop such measures that can be made available to the government agencies, health services, hospitals and other services for quick solutions to the coronavirus epidemic and other such calamities. So apart from this, through this challenge, work will be done to make citizens aware, to motivate them to face any challenge and to prevent any crisis and to help people get livelihood. Okay, so next, see, there are many national policies which were released recently. We'll try to cover one in each session so that it will become easy. Okay, hardly like they have provided any prelims related facts, but they have some salient features, so we have to be little bit aware of. So this National Electronics Policy 2019, it aims to position India as a global hub for electronic system design and manufactures. So they have given some features, so go through it. I don't want to explain all these features. So next important topic is Ayushman Bharat scheme and Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana. So Ayushman Bharat scheme and Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana, it is like quite often repeated in the newspapers. Obviously you would have read. So Ayushman Bharat has been labeled as the largest health scheme in the world and benefiting over 10 lakh patients. And with Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana, the government is taking healthcare protection to a new aspirational level. So this would be world's largest government-funded healthcare program targeting more than 50 crore beneficiaries. So this Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana, it primarily targets the poor, deprived rural families and identified occupational category of urban workers and their families as per the latest socio-economic caste census data for both rural as well as urban areas. And this Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana will be an entitlement based, where it will be decided on the basis of deprivation criteria according to the socio-economic caste census database. So the major features of this particular Ayushman Bharat scheme and Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana is to create a network of health and wellness infrastructure network. So government aims to open 5 lakh health and wellness center by 2022. And the beneficiaries of the health insurance will be as per the socio-economic caste census 2011 data, and it will cover both rural as well as urban and to include around 50 crore economically weaker section. So Ayushman Bharat, which is it has subsumed the existing Rashtriya Swasthya Bima Yojana and Senior Citizen Health Insurance Scheme. So this Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana, it will provide a benefit cover of rupees 5 lakh per year per family, and expenses incurred will be shared between central and state in the ratio of 60:40 ratio. So this Ayushman Bharat will take care of the secondary and tertiary care procedures and also cover pre and post hospital expenses. So cashless benefits will be allowed from any public or private empaneled hospitals. And there is also a provision of Ayushman Mitra. That is, empaneled hospitals will have Ayushman Mitra to assist patients. So benefits can be availed from any place in India and no hospital can refuse treatment under this particular scheme. So the scheme is principle based rather than rule based, allowing state enough flexibility in terms of packages, procedures and scheme design, entitlements as well as other guidelines. And states can implement the scheme through an insurance company or directly through the trust or society or implementation support agency or a mixed approach. And claims of the hospital are also settled through online portal in a time-bound manner. And at national level, National Health Authority has been set up. So this National Health Authority has been set up as an attached office to Ministry of Health and Family Welfare to manage the implementation of the scheme. So next important scheme is National Digital Health Mission. So Prime Minister of India recently during 74th Independence Day launched this National Digital Health Mission. So this National Digital Health Mission is a complete digital health ecosystem. So the digital platform will be launched with 4 key features. One is Health ID, Personal Health Records, DigiDoctor and Health Facility Register. So at a later stage, it will also include e-pharmacy and telemedicine services. So the National Digital Health Mission is implemented by National Health Authority under the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. And this National Health Authority is also the implementing agency of the Ayushman Bharat, as we saw here. And the platform will be available in the form of an app and website. And you should know Health ID. So National Health ID will be a repository of all health related information of every Indian. So various healthcare providers such as hospitals, laboratories, insurance companies, online pharmacies, telemedicine firms will be expected to participate in this Health ID system, and every patient who wishes to have their health records available digitally must create a unique Health ID using their basic details through mobile number or Aadhaar number. And each Health ID will be linked to a Health Data Consent Manager, which will be used to seek the patient's consent and allow for seamless flow of health information. Okay, so the DigiDoctor option will allow doctors from across the country to enroll and their details, including their contact numbers if they want to provide any particular service, if they are free and available. So these doctors will also be assigned digital signatures for free, which can be used for writing prescriptions, and it will be voluntary for the hospitals and doctors to provide details for the app. So next important topic is asteroid impact and deflection assessment. So over the years, scientists have suggested different ways to ward off asteroid hit, such as blowing up the asteroid before it reaches the Earth or deflecting it off with a spacecraft. So let's see about this asteroid impact and deflection assessment. So this asteroid impact and deflection assessment, that is AIDA mission, is a proposed pair of space probes which includes NASA's DART, that is Double Asteroid Redirection Test, and European Space Agency's HERA. So this AIDA, it will study and demonstrate the kinetic effects of crashing an impactor spacecraft into an asteroid moon. So the mission is intended to test and validate impact models of whether a spacecraft could successfully deflect an asteroid on a collision course with the Earth. So the mission target is Didymos, a binary near-Earth asteroid, one of whose bodies is of the size that could pose the most likely significant threat to the Earth. So in 2018, NASA announced it had started the construction of DART, which is scheduled to launch in 2021 with an aim to slam into the smaller asteroid of the Didymos system at around 6 km per second in 2022. And HERA, which is scheduled to launch in 2024, will arrive at the Didymos system in 2027 to measure the impact crater produced by the DART collision and study the change in the asteroid's orbital trajectory. So NASA's Center for Near-Earth Object Study determines the time and distance of these objects as and when their approach to the Earth is close. And do one homework, try to know the difference between asteroids and comets. So next important topic is Ceres. So Ceres is a dwarf planet. So this Ceres, it lies in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter and is also the largest object in that particular belt. So you have to remember. And it is the first dwarf planet to be orbited by a spacecraft. So what is that spacecraft? That is NASA's Dawn. So NASA's Dawn spacecraft is studying this particular Ceres. So this Ceres hosts the possibility of having water, something that many other planets do not have. So this is what the NASA's Dawn spacecraft has analyzed and got the data. So it says that Ceres now has the status of an ocean world. So there are other dwarf planets and moons in our solar system where oceans can exist, including the moons of Saturn and Jupiter. So the observations from the Dawn suggest the presence of liquid water under Ceres' surface and making the dwarf planet water rich. And there are officially 5 dwarf planets in our solar system. The most famous is the Pluto, Eris, Makemake, Homa and Ceres. So next important topic is Betelgeuse. See, Betelgeuse was in news because there was a mysterious dimming of this supergiant star Betelgeuse. And now there are studies which suggest that the mysterious dimming was most likely caused by an immense amount of hot material which is ejected into the space, forming a dust cloud that actually blocked the starlight coming from the star's surface. So these observations have been done by NASA's Hubble Space Telescope. So let's know about this Betelgeuse. So Betelgeuse is one of the largest stars visible to the naked eye. And it is a red supergiant star that is over 20 times bigger than the Sun in the constellation Orion. So this Betelgeuse is in the constellation Orion. And if it was the center of our solar system, its surface would lie beyond the asteroid belt and it would have engulfed the orbits of Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars and possibly Jupiter. So Betelgeuse, which is about 725 light years away, is an aging red supergiant star that has swelled in size due to complex evolving changes in its nuclear fusion furnace at the core. So next important topic is 30-meter telescope. So this 30-meter telescope was in news because India, which is also a partner in the construction of this one of the largest telescope in the world, has said it wants the project to be moved out of the proposed site at Mauna Kea, a dormant volcano in Hawaii. And you have to remember, Indian government has given its approval for Indian participation in this TMT project at the cost of 1,300 crores from 2014 to 2023. And it is a proposed extremely large telescope that has become controversial due to its planned location on Mauna Kea, Hawaii, because this particular mountain is considered sacred by some of the native Hawaiians. So India wants this particular project to be moved out of the proposed site of Mauna Kea. So let's see about this 30-meter telescope. It is a new class of extremely large telescope. So it is an extremely large telescope and which has the ability to see deeper into space and observe cosmic objects with unprecedented sensitivity. So with its 30-meter prime mirror diameter, this TMT will be 3 times as wide with 9 times more area than the largest currently existing visible light telescope in the world. So this will provide unparalleled resolution with TMT images more than 12 times sharper than those from the Hubble Space Telescope. So the major purpose of this 30-meter telescope is designed for near ultraviolet to mid-infrared observations featuring adaptive optics to assist in correcting image blur. So the significance of this 30-meter telescope for India will be like scientists will be able to study fainter objects far away from us in the universe, which gives information about early stages of evolution of the universe. It will also give us finer details of not so far away objects like undiscovered planets and other objects in the solar system and planets around other stars. Also try to know about TMT International Observatory LLC. So this TMT International Observatory LLC is a non-profit organization which was established in 2014, and the main objective is to carry out the construction and operation phases of this TMT project. So the partner member of this TIO are US, Japan, China and India and also Canada. So try to know who all are the members of this TMT 30-meter telescope. So next important topic is MODIS. So MODIS, don't get confused with PM Narendra Modi. So this MODIS is different. This is Moderate Resolution Imaging Spectroradiometer. So this MODIS is a key instrument aboard the NASA's Terra and Aqua satellites. So this Terra orbits around the Earth is timed so that it passes from north to south across the equator in the morning, while Aqua passes south to north over the equator in the afternoon. So this difference you have to know, important. And Terra MODIS and Aqua MODIS are viewing the entire Earth surface every 1 to 2 days. So this helps to understand the global dynamics and process occurring on the land. So you have to remember MODIS means it is related to NASA's Terra and Aqua. At the same time, you have to remember these two differences, as well as it helps to understand the global dynamics and also processes that are occurring on the land. Say for example, changes in the land pattern, land degradation, deforestation, forest fires, etc. And also this MODIS is managed by the NASA. So next important topic is Antarctica Impulsive Transient Antenna, or ANITA. So ANITA, which is an experiment maintained by these researchers at NASA, has suddenly come into the limelight as the cosmic ray shower that is key to the new discovery was a part of NASA's ANITA and IceCube experiment taking place in the Antarctica. So now the researchers believe that these particles are proof to parallel universe. See, UPSC has already asked a question on IceCube experiment. So we can expect a question on ANITA. So this ANITA is a stratospheric balloon with a payload flying over the Antarctica. So you can see in the figure there is a balloon with a payload which is flying over the Antarctic ice sheet. And the major objective of this balloon was designed to detect the cosmic ray air showers through radio wave signals. So these signals were detected to have been bouncing off the ice. So it involves an array of radio antennas attached to a helium balloon which flies over the Antarctic ice sheet at 37,000 meters. So this ANITA detects neutrinos pinging in from space and colliding with the matter in Antarctic ice sheet. So this is what you have to remember with respect to prelims. So next important is there is a term called Askaryan effect. So this Askaryan effect is a phenomena where a particle traveling at a velocity faster than light in a dense electric medium produces shower of secondary charge particles. So the dense electric medium can be ice, salt, or lunar regolith. So next important topic, Project Cosmic Microwave Background Bharat. So Project CMB Bharat is under consideration by ISRO, and it is a proposal for comprehensive next generation cosmic microwave background. So it's a comprehensive next generation cosmic microwave background mission, and it would help listen to the faintest murmurs of the Earth universe. And it is proposed as an international collaboration mission with major Indian contribution, and it is a space-based mission to observe the anisotropes as well as the spectral distortions in the cosmic microwave background. So just remember for prelims that Project Cosmic Microwave Background is a program by ISRO, and it is an international collaboration mission where the major contribution will be from India, and it is to observe this anisotropes as well as the spectral distortions in the cosmic microwave background. So this cosmic microwave background is radiation left over from the time the first atoms were formed in the universe after the Big Bang. So try to revise all these 20 important topics, and let's meet in another session. Thank you.